A bowl of clear, gelatinous bird spit sits on the kitchen table of a modest house in Myeik, Myanmar. The host, Sophia, pours the mixture into a pot, adds a dash of sugar and a pinch of powdered, strawberry-flavored cream, and flips on the burner. After a few stirs, dessert is served. The concoction tastes like a sweet, watery pudding, but flavor isn't the point, Sophia says. The soup allegedly helps with a wide array of ailments, from clearing phlegm, to improving kidney function, to heightening sex drive. After a few spoonfuls, Sophia and her husband Baka lead the way upstairs to their built-in nest factory. The second story of the couple's coastal home once served as their bedroom. These days, however, it belongs entirely to the edible nest swiftlets, the old-world counterparts of vos and chimney swifts. Dozens of the gray, half-ounce birds dart through a window in the back, screeching and clicking as they swirl around the rafters. The floor is covered in a thin layer of guano that makes the room smell like a chicken coop. Baka shines a flashlight at the ceiling, illuminating neat rows of cup-like structures pasted to the beams. The nests are made of swiftlet saliva, excreted from glands just inside the bird's beaks. The swiftlets' near-translucent nests are shaped like a bowl cut in half. But it's the glue, or saliva, that the epicurists are really after. Videoong nang soe for Sophia and Baka. This crude setup brings in big business. They harvest the nests 4 times a year, allowing chicks enough time to fledge while also generating more than 3 pounds of material for birds' nest soup each quarter. In a country where the minimum annual wage doesn't quite reach $800, harboring swiftlets can amount to a hefty chunk of income, about $6,000 in Sophia and Baka's case. We started farming birds' nests because we knew it could help us live worry-free in retirement, Sophia says. The arrangement has its perks for the swiftlets as well. The house represents a safe and predictable place to rear chicks, far out of reach from rats, snakes, and other hungry animals. Still, as more families across Southeast Asia take up swiftlet farming, it's unclear if this new industry is helping our herding birds in the wild. The human appetite for birds' nest soup dates back to at least the 1500s, when it was served as a high-end healing tonic to Chinese elites. Collectors would scale rickety bamboo scaffolding to scrape the ingredients off cliff ledges and cave faces, a practice that's still prevalent throughout the species' Asiatic range, despite its harmful impact on the birds. People often can't see into a nest before plucking it from the wall, meaning eggs and young swiftlets don't always survive. At the same time, vast numbers of swiftlets in Myanmar, Indonesia, Vietnam, and other parts of the region are moving in with their vendors. In Malaysia alone, the number of swiftlet houses increased from 900 in 1998 to about 60,000 in 2013. The rapid transition over the past 2 decades has been a boon to farmers, restaurants, and foodies. Nest sales have risen to an estimated $5 billion a year, and a bowl of soup can now fetch up to $100 in Hong Kong. All the while, demand among the middle class is exploding. Sophia serves a sweetened homemade soup to her husband and father-in-law. Photoong nang soe. The earliest reports of housebroken swiftlets come from Java in the 1800s, when a few birds haphazardly glued their nests onto outhouses and culverts. Today, the evening skies of cities like Myeik are filled with swarms of edible nest swiftlets and their staccato mating calls. Much of the frenzied noise comes from loudspeakers hung in the windows of house farms, a luring tactic that was developed in the latter parts of the 20th century. It's now used almost universally, along with the cavernous, fortress-like buildings built specifically to attract swiftlets that dot skylines from southern Myanmar to Indonesia. The evolving human-swiftlet partnership has both surprised and concerned Gawthorne Hardy, also known by his formal title, the 5th Earl of Cranbrook. The British biologist began studying edible nest swiftlets as a young postgraduate in Malaysia in 1956, where he conducted a series of experiments to confirm the birds' use of echolocation in nesting caves. He then turned his attention to investigating their insect-heavy diets and general survival habits. Baka has experienced the fortunes of the swiftlet farming industry firsthand. The artificial nest house that he and Sophia built 10 years ago is directly above his living room. Photoong nang soe. More recently, Lord Cranbrook has been charting the progress and impacts of swiftlet nest factories. These birds are now as domesticated as bees, he says. They're being provided with these specialized hives by people, and what they're producing is being harvested. But it's the swiftlets themselves that jump-started the process. Humans, he points out, have simply responded. Years ago, in a small fishing boat a half-mile off the coast of western Malaysia, Salm Allinson snapped on a life jacket and jumped overboard. After 60 feet of hard swimming, he pulled himself onto a jet of limestone, cutting his hands and feet on the razor-edged clams in the rock. A government report from the 1980s had listed this remote outcropping as a swiftlet nesting site. But Mallinson, who was working for Lord Cranbrook before attending the University of Edinburgh, only found seashells and snakes. There weren't even signs of nests, Mallinson says. I don't think there had been nests there for years. His theory is that passing fishermen had taken them all down years ago. Video Ong Nang Soe. For 9 weeks in 2014, Mallinson and a partner trekked through the Malaysian state of Sarawak to check the current statuses of old swiftlet caves. Some were depleted, others were completely empty. Only the ones guarded by territorial harvesters still had substantial populations left. To Lord Cranbrook, the findings were discouraging, but they justified the need for protections around the edible nest swiftlet. The International Union for Conservation of Nature classifies the species as widespread and of least concern. That's a mistake, Lord Cranbrook says. The birds have faced serious declines in pockets of their range. In the Andaman and Nicobar Islands in the Bay of Bengal, stress from harvesting decimated the local population by as much as 80% by the early 2000s. In Myeik Cave, a major tourist attraction in Malaysia, the species was pushed to the brink by nest collectors. Similarly, a related bird, the Indian swiftlet, has also seen its populations reduced along the southwest coast of India. A typical Myanmar house farm like the one in the video above has a nesting space on the top floor and a shop on the bottom. Here, owner Damayanth Win in the foreground presides over a busy afternoon of business. Photo Ong Nang Soe. These downward spirals began well before the advent of nest farming, but Lord Cranbrook believes the recent craze is only loading more pressure on wild colonies. The expansion of domestication has broadened consumer appeal and access to nests, he says. What's more, it's pushed up demands for cave-fresh ingredients, which some claim are higher quality than the home-raised variety. All this house farming has not saved the wild population, and it's not going to, Lord Cranbrook says. The result is a conflicted relationship between farming and swiftlets. On the one hand, it can be argued that the industry has benefited the birds in terms of survival and range expansion. There's evidence that house-farmed individuals have been able to colonize new areas in Vietnam, Cambodia, and elsewhere. But the rise of the swiftlet hotels and their winged patrons is creating a number of unanswered questions. Experts like Lord Cranbrook speculate that the increase in urban swiftlets could cause imbalances in insects that many other birds need for food. They also haven't seen any evidence of house-nesting individuals returning to caves, which means the gains may not be spilling over to wild populations. Currently, Lord Cranbrook and scientists at several Malaysian universities are sifting through the genetics of domesticated swiftlets in hopes of tracing their ancestry. Thus far, their research shows that house-farmed individuals in Malaysia are distinct from nearby wild populations. This reinforces Cranbrook's belief that domesticated and wild birds should be treated differently when it comes to their conservation status. Swiftlets stream into Myeik at dusk, beckoned by the artificial peals of their own calls. Video Ong Nang Soe. There's an economic incentive in decoding the species genome, too. For example, entrepreneurs could selectively breed birds that build large nests, or create custom medicines that combat avian disease. With this leverage, swiftlet advocates are looking to convince the industry that protecting wild nests, and the integrity of the entire species, is beneficial to all. It's an honest selling point, so long as the lives of swiftlets and humans remain intertwined. Back in Myeik, in the market down the street from Sophia and Bakas's house, a merchant sits behind a case full of silver jewelry, holding a basket of birds' nests on her lap. Using a pair of tweezers, she cleans each nest by removing the thin, dark feathers woven into the strands of saliva. She just started farming swiftlets in her house 3 months ago, and already business is booming, she says. She's grateful for the extra income and she doesn't mind living next to the birds, either.